Okay, what we're looking at today is paper 1 question 3, and we're using one of the sample Key Stage 3 extracts off from the AQA website to have a look at how we might go about responding to the question and how we might go about annotating the text to put together a good top level 8-mark answer. So as you will know, question 3, paper 1 is the structure question. So the layout of the question will be very similar. You now need to think about the whole of the source. So this question will always prompt you to reflect on the entirety of the source. So it's very useful to underline that to make it clear that you're going to be responding to the entirety of the extract. This text is a description of an amusing childhood incident. So it's giving you a context and a kind of framework really for understanding the extract. How has the writer structured the text to interest you as a reader will always be the question that is asked of you. You could write about, and it will always give you the same 3 bullet points, what the writer focuses your attention on at the beginning. So some keywords there that can help us certainly with focusing our attention on the extract, but also how we go about starting the paragraphs that we write. What the writer focuses your attention on at the beginning. The how and the why the writer changes this focus as the source develops, and any other structural features that interest you, 8 marks. So what you're being tested on really here is your understanding of 2 things. What and why. So we're really thinking about what is the writer showing us or focusing our attention on. What is the writer showing us in that particular part of the extract, and why are they showing us that in that particular order? And that's the crux of this question, what and why. So now we've understood the structure, the kind of intention of the question, and really what we're going to be focusing on in the course of our answer. It's time now to have a look at the extract in light of that particular question. So this is the extract. The extract will always give you a contextual box here at the beginning to give you some understanding of, the entirety of the book from which this extract comes. In this extract, the writer Roald Dahl describes a funny childhood incident entitled The Great Mouse Plot. The sweet shop in Llandaff in the year 1923 was the very centre of our lives. To us it was what a bar is to a drunk or a church is to a bishop. Without it there would have been little to live for. But it had one terrible drawback, this sweet shop. The woman who owned it was a horror. We hated her, and we had good reason for doing so. Her name was Mrs. Pratchett. She was a small skinny old hag with a moustache on her upper lip and a mouth as sour as a green gooseberry. She never smiled. She never welcomed us when we went in, and the only time she spoke were when she said things like, "I'm watching you, so keep your thieving fingers off them chocolates," or, "I don't want you in here just to look around, either you forks out or you gets out." But by far the most loathsome thing about Mrs. Pratchett was the filth that clung around her. Her apron was grey and greasy, her blouse had bits of breakfast all over it, toast crumbs and tea stains and splotches of dried egg yolk. It was her hands, however, that disturbed us most. They were disgusting. They were black with dirt and grime. They looked as though they had been putting lumps of coal on the fire all day long. And do not forget, please, that it was these very hands and fingers that she plunged into the sweet jar when we asked for a pennyworth of treacle toffee or wine gums or nut clusters or whatever. The mere sight of her grimy right hand with its black fingernails digging an ounce of chocolate fudge out of a jar would have caused a starving tramp to go running from the shop. But not ours. Sweets were our lifeblood. We would have put up with far worse than that to get them. So we simply stood and watched in sullen silence while this disgusting old woman stirred around inside the jars with her foul fingers. You can understand why we had it in for Mrs. Pratchett in a big way, but we didn't quite know what to do about it. Many schemes were put forward, but none of them was any good. None of them, that is, until suddenly, one memorable afternoon, we found a dead mouse. My 4 friends and I had come across a loose floorboard at the back of the classroom, and when we prized it up with the blade of a pocket knife, we discovered a big hollow space underneath. This, we decided, would be our secret hiding place for sweets and other small treasures, such as conkers and monkey nuts and birds' eggs. One day when we lifted it up, we found a dead mouse. It was an exciting discovery. Thwaites took it out by its tail and waved it in front of our faces. "What shall we do with it?" he cried. "It stinks," someone shouted. "Throw it out of the window, quick." "Hold on a tick," I said. "Don't throw it away." Thwaites hesitated. They all looked at me. When writing about oneself, one must strive to be truthful. Truth is more important than modesty. I must tell you, therefore, that it was I and I alone who had the idea for the great and daring mouse plot. We all have our moments of brilliance and glory, and this was mine. "Why don't we," I said, "slip it into one of Mrs. Pratchett's jars of sweets? Then when she puts her dirty hands in to grab a handful, she'll grab a stinky dead mouse instead." The other four stared at me in wonder. Then, as the sheer genius of the plot began to sink in, they all had started grinning. They slapped me on the back. They cheered me and danced around the classroom. "We'll do it today," they cried. "We'll do it on the way home. You had the idea," they said to me, "so you can be the one to put the mouse in the jar." So going back to the question, as we always should do before we, develop the plans for our answer, we're going to start with this bullet point here. So what the writer focuses your attention on at the beginning. So what we need to do is to reflect back at on the beginning of the extract and think about what the writer is showing us and why they're showing us that in that order in relation to the rest of the extract. So the focus on what? So we are very much given a clear context that this is a very particular memory in a very particular place in a very particular year. So this is a powerful memory of place and time for this person. It's interesting that the writer focuses our attention on a collective memory. So these are young people, and this is this group, this gang, this collaboration of children. Experiencing what it is with the sweet shop here. It's central that we understand the importance of the sweet shop is established straight away. So we've got a very particular memory, a very powerful particular memory. That's what we're being shown, that the sweet shop is central to that powerful memory, and that there is a collective experience going on here. So that's what we're focusing on here, certainly. Interestingly, though, the writer chooses to focus our attention on a contrasting element here. So we start off with the glory of the sweet shop, centre of our lives. It's what a bar is to a drunk or a church is to a bishop. So the analogy is that this sweet shop is crucial to their very existence. And yet that's contrasted here with this drawback. The woman, the horror, we hated her. So you've got this interesting opening focus and the contrast between the shop and the owner. So that's an interesting focus. That's the what. And let's wonder why. So why is it that the writer chooses to establish the importance of the sweet shop and the horror of the sweet shop owner first? Why do they do that? We understand what we're being shown. Why are we being shown that first? Well, that's interesting because, as we know, having read it, the boys cannot abide the sight of this woman and her disgusting hands in particular, and basically utilise the spotting of a dead mouse to play a trick on her. So why would they therefore want to establish how important the sweet shop is, but B, how awful the woman is? Why would the writer want to do that at the very beginning of this extract? Well, probably so that the reader, and I think, sympathises more with the boys and not the owner, so that we overlook perhaps the cruelty of the dead mouse prank because of the true horror of this woman and how difficult she makes their experience, and how difficult it was really perhaps to avoid her as well. So when you're talking about the structure question, you need to be thinking about what is the writer showing us and why are they showing us that in that order? Why are we focusing on that at the beginning? Many of you write about the what, you don't talk about the why, and the why is really central to your answer. Okay, back to the question. The second bullet point here asks us to think about how and why the writer changes this focus. So how do they change the focus and why do they do that? Well, there are a couple of elements here of a couple of moments, shall we say, where the focus is changed. So the focus here is on the sweet shop and the woman. And here we have a great deal of detail zooming in on her disgusting hands and fingers. So we could argue that we have a change in focus here where we zoom in on the very specific nature of her disgusting hands. That's fine. However, there is also a really central change in focus, and it's here. Prior to that, we have sweet shop and sweet shop owner, owner, owner. It's here where the change in focus goes from the owner and all of that to them discovering the mouse and the beginnings of that plot to prank the owner of the sweet shop. So I think it's here. Suddenly, one memorable afternoon, we found the dead mouse. So remembering again that the question is about how and why the writer changes the focus. So how do they change the focus? They change it in a few ways. If we're looking at this element here as being the change in focus, instead of talking about the specifics of the sweet shop owner, instead we have a change in time, because this now is a more specific part of time rather than a general recollection. This is more specific. It's a particular place, so we have a change in focus from the sweet shop and the sweet owner to the back of a classroom, a loose floorboard, and in particular the finding of the dead mouse. So that's what the change of focus is. How do they change the focus? They change it from the zooming in of the sweet shop owner and her disgusting hands to a different place, the classroom, a different time, a particular afternoon, and the excitement really of focusing in on finding this dead mouse and thinking about what they can do with it. So that's the what. So now the question is why. Why has the writer chosen to change the focus from the sweet shop owner there and her disgusting hands to the zooming in on the memorable afternoon of the dead mouse discovery? Well, the reason probably is that it creates an opportunity. So the mouse has created an opportunity for the boys, and for the readers we get this growing sense of mischief and trouble. We get a building of tension and the thrill of this potential prank. So as I said earlier on, we are already sympathising with the boys more than with the sweet shop owner, because the writer has been very particular in establishing how disgusting she is, so we sympathise more with the boys than we do with her. And because of that sympathy, we are experiencing the same kind of thrill and excitement and growing sense of trouble and mischief, an opportunity that the boys are here too. So that's the what and the why. The third part of the question asks us to think about any other structural features that interest you and why. For me, I might look again at the concluding part of the extract, where the boys are sitting around, standing around, staring at the narrator and talking about what they're going to do with the dead mouse. So I'm going to look at this part in terms of its interesting structure. So remembering that what we're talking about is what and why. So what is the writer showing us at the end here? So we first off have a dialogue between the boys where we have the plot outlined for the prank. So that's what they're discussing here. They're talking about, and we could use these quotations to talk about the emphasis on the excitement with the exclamation marks, certainly reinforcing that. So the writer chooses to focus our attention on this dialogue between the boys. So the what is the dialogue between the boys, the outline of the plot, and the excitement and the thrill and the anticipation created by the exclamation marks, the words cheer, dance, and so on. Why does the writer do this? Well, we haven't got the rest of the extract to see, or the rest of the story to see, but certainly the effect of that is to foreshadow the foreshadow the thrill and excitement of the prank. So what we've done then is to look at this question 3. Understand we're looking at the whole source. Understand that we need to break down our answer into these 3 component parts. That the first paragraph we need to explain what the writer is focusing our attention on at the beginning and why. Why has the writer chosen that in relation to the rest of the extract? We then need to choose a part where the writer changes the focus, and then we need to think about how they change the focus and why they would do that. And then for me, I usually look at the end of the extract and think about a structural feature or structure in the end of the extract as well. So the reinforcement here is the questions what and why to help you understand how you might best go about responding to that question. So having annotated this, the next video we're going to look at is a sample answer, talk through the effectiveness of it and see where we might apply the mark scheme to it. Thank you.